Hello everybody. So I've got another coding project that I want to show you today. This one I call a this or that program, and the goal of it is to allow you to sort large lists of data using just A/B choices. So I originally was going to do this project in JavaScript, so this is a setup that I created a long time ago, and it doesn't have a ton of functionality because I never finished it. But the way it works is you can input items like you put item 1, put item 2, you put like item 3, and you can see it starts adding them to this list down here, and then when you sort them, all it does currently is shuffle the list up. You can see that functionality in this document that I made here. So I was originally going to use JavaScript for the logic and HTML as sort of the styling and format of everything, but I could never really figure out how to get that working. And the other thing is I wanted this one to have images that would appear in these boxes, so you could choose based on an image. Um, but that felt like it was going to require a lot of importing data, and you can see some of my ideas commented out here. At one point I wanted to rate every Mario Kart track, something like that. And so this is kind of an incomplete document. Well, I came back to this project and I realized it'd be a lot easier if I just used text and if I did it in Python. So here is the completed project that I just recently finished that I'm going to show to you today. So I'll demonstrate it first, and then I'll run through the code step by step. And then, as per usual, in the description of this video, there's a link to my Google Drive where all of my projects are held. So you can go and download any of them and check them out for yourself, and make any modifications you want, to use it for whatever you like. But here, I'll just show it off. So I've got some default lists here. Um, of different items you could use. So this first one is a list of all the Pokemon, and it actually is a very long list. Um, I just copied it online, so it's probably not updated with some of the more recent games. Here's a list of all 50 United States, and then here's a list of some of the most common programming languages. And as you can see, these ones are listed by when they came out, and the other two are listed in alphabetical order. So let's use the programming languages one. So I'll uncomment that and run this. So this says any additional items. For now, we're just not going to put anything in. So it's going to ask me to pick between them. So I'm just going to kind of add some random options here. I'm not sure how much I agree with these. I'm just kind of picking them. You can see eventually I'm going to go through all of these, and I'm just going to pick 2 from now on because it has a lot of options. But hopefully I'm not offending anyone by choosing one language over the other. So you see we've run out of options. And so now, based on all those 2s I put in, it's ordered them from my favorite to least favorite programming languages. It seems here that Java won out, followed by Rust and JavaScript. And honestly, those aren't some bad choices. Towards the bottom we have Groovy and Go, which I've never worked in. But yeah, so you can see it kind of just ranks them based on these 1 or 2 inputs. Now, one other thing I want to demonstrate, if we do this again, there's actually a 3 option, as you can see by the instruction here. So let's say I really don't want to pick between these 2 because they're just so close together, and I'm like, oh, it's so hard to decide. I can choose 3, and it will replace the second item with the next item in the list. So in this case, we got C. So it's saying, okay, well, you don't have to make that decision. Make this one instead. And the way that works is this second item just gets appended to the end of the list, and so we just deal with it later. So if I keep putting 3, you can see this first item stays the same, and it's going through all of these items. Now, you'll see that eventually it'll start to loop back around. So see, we're back to Julia, back to C, back to CSS, back to Python, just like this up here. So at some point you do need to make a choice, because it's going to just keep choosing the first item versus the second one. So you can compare that to everything else, and eventually you're going to be like, let's say you keep going and you're like, oh, you know what? I can totally make this decision. And so then it will move on to a next one. So now let's run through the code and actually see how it works. So first we have our imports, and I created a custom error exception called error that we use in case the list item is too short. So in this case, let's say we start with a blank list and I only add item 1. Then we get a custom error that says you must include more than 1 item. So that's what that's for. So then we initially ask for additional items. So this allows the user to input any of their items. So if you wanted to put in a custom list of items, you would just do that and not uncomment any of these. Otherwise, you can use one of these initial lists as a default one. Then here is the block of code which parses through that input list that we give the program, and it tries to sort it into a working list instead of just a string of text. And so to show you how that works, it's going to look for a comma in your input string because we're separating it by commas. And then it's going to say, okay, get the index of that comma. And then it's going to say, okay, um, look at what that is. If we take the comma off, strip the white space, is it a blank thing? Are you like, so if you put in a bunch of commas like this, then once you remove the comma and all the white space, there's no item there. And so it's saying make sure it's not a blank item. And if it isn't a blank item, then take that thing and add it to this item list. So you can see here, it gives us the same issue saying we must include more than one item. And so there's no items between those commas, and so they're just kind of ignored. Now, and then once we've added that, we say, okay, go to the next comma. And, well, delete all this stuff that we've added to the list or ignored and go to the next one. And that's the while loop. And then it says, okay, once we've finished the while loop, let's look at this and make sure we need to add one more item, because as you know, with a list, you have item 1, item 2, and item 3. But there's only 2 commas between these items. So we've deleted that one and we've deleted that one, and then the while loop ends because there's no more commas. And so then we add the very last item like this. So it says, okay, make sure once again that it's not a blank thing, and then add it to the list. So now after we've gone through this code, we've taken that user input and made it into a usable list. And if possible, if we've used one of these, it'll actually add it to one of these lists. So now we have our actual list of items we're going to sort. So then here we check to make sure that there's at least 2 items. And if not, we throw an error. And now here is the main part of the thing. This is a digital bracket function. And I created this to be a recursive function. And so we're going to run through it bit by bit, but hopefully it's not too confusing. So the function is called doBracket, and it takes in a list. So you'll see down here, we actually call that right here. So we take that list of items that we just made and call this function. And it also prints the instructions here. So what happens is it says, okay, first we're going to shuffle the list. That's the very first thing we need to do because we want them in a random order. And then we're going to make a winner and loser list. So step 1 is to take all of the items that we've created and sort them into winners and losers. And so here we're doing another while loop that's saying while the length of the list is greater than or equal to 2. And the reason we're using 2 is because you need 2 items to be able to compare 2 items. If there's 1 or 0 items, then you can't make a comparison. So this whole while loop happens when there's at least 2 items. And we say, okay, let's set this chosen to blank. And we're saying, okay, they're going to choose either 1, 2, or 3. But if they put in anything else, just keep asking data. So if you run this and you say, oh, I want to put in 6 or G or literally anything else, it's just going to keep asking you the same question until you put in 1, 2, or 3, and then it will let you order them. So then it's saying, okay, if they chose number 1, then add the first item to winners and the second item to losers. If they chose 2, add the second item to winners and the first item to losers. And then because we've chosen 1 or 2, those 2 items are no longer needed in the list, so we just remove them. And then we say, okay, if they chose 3, then all we're going to do is take that second item and append it to the end of this list. And so this is a really clever one-line solution that I was pretty proud of. So we're saying I want to append to the end of this list the result of removing the second item from the list. So it's kind of a cool little one-line thing there. So then we say, okay, after the while loop is finished, there's either going to be 0 or 1 items because we've been removing 2 items at a time from the list. So if there's an odd number of items, we're going to have 1. And if there's 0, we don't need to worry about it. But if there's 1 item left, then we do what you do in a typical bracket, which is just allow the item to move on. And so we say, okay, take that item, add it to the winners, and remove it from the list. So now we have a winners list and a losers list, but we have to make brackets out of those two because we have half of our items are winners and half of them are losers, but this doesn't really get us to what is the best and what is second best. And so what we do now is we say, okay, normally, ignore this line for a second, but normally what you're going to do is you're going to say, hey, make a bracket out of the winners and make a bracket out of the losers. And what that does is it creates a bracket of a smaller size, and you can keep doing that. and you're going to get the winners separated into winners and losers, and the winners of those are separated into winners and losers. And eventually, you're going to get to the point where winners, the list of winners only has one item in it, because eventually you're going to get to the point where when we do this bracket, there's only two items. And so if there's only two items, you're going to sort one into winners and one into losers. And if there's only one item in winners, then you're going to append that to this final order list, which is a list that keeps track of which ones are first and which ones are last. And so if you think about it, the proper run order of this function is going to put the best items in first and the worst items in last. And that's because we do the winners first. So what happens is, imagine we have a list of 8 items. We've separated into 4 winners, 4 losers. And then here it says, okay, we're going to do a bracket out of the winners. So we do a bracket again. Now we have 2 winners and 2 losers. And then it says, okay, let's do a bracket out of those 2. And then here it says we have 1 winner and 1 loser. Now when we hit this line, it says, oh, there is a length of 1. And so we add that number 1 winner to final order. And then it says, okay, now we go on to this part. And then we do the losers of that top bracket. So then that's also going to say, oh, there's 1. So that must be the second place best one. And then that goes in there. And then we go back to the previous recursive function, and it says, oh, well, now we have 2 losers of the top 4. And so we need to make a bracket out of those, which will give us the 3rd and 4th place respectively. And so because this is a recursive function that works in the right order, it will always give you the correct order of the preferences. So once this line runs out, so once we've done all the brackets and everything is ordered in the correct thing, we just have this really short little printing of the answers. So we have this little line of here's the order from best to worst, and then a for loop printing each one with a digit signifying which place it returned. So yeah, I hope that this is kind of a cool project to you guys. I don't know why that was weird. It kind of uncommented itself there, even though the hashtag was still there. But yeah, I hope you guys found this interesting. I hope it is useful to you in some way. Thank you guys for watching, and hope to see you in the next one. Bye.